Go. In this time, we are very, very close right now to a big shift, and we've been trying to put some more videos down. And just to give people a little bit of background, I'm Lee. I'm sat again with Michael. Michael first introduced to I about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years ago, and we've been divinely relegated, let's say. We first met in Cheltenham, which is where we were in England, in the UK. Brought down my brother Dean Willis, who's currently flying from Nepal to Egypt. And having been in UK, then I left to come around, drive around Europe, and went to Holland and Denmark and a few other places. And Dean and Michael and a few of the others turned up in Denmark, met us there, and in Holland. We were doing a lot of other activation and architecture work, divinely and energetically at the time. We were to leave. I left Denmark, I don't know, October 22, I guess, and flew to Thailand to meet up with the GPMS team representative in Thailand, Sister Jidarat, and from there to the Philippines, and from there to Cambodia, to South Korea, and back to Cambodia again. And Michael has met us up with a divine brother from Denmark. He met in Cambodia with us, and again, he sat down with us today. Now, been in Cambodia now for nearly a year, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place, Siem Reap. But it's time to leave, and divinely we've been given that we must go to Myanmar, Burma, and possibly meet up with some of our team in India, in the Assam Manipur area of India. And this leaves Michael in Cambodia. So we are where we are currently, with a little bit of repositioning and reallocation of divine vessels, for want of a better word, or energies at this time. And there's a little bit of up in the airism, especially releasing this sacral and moving towards this point of change, whatever that looks like. So it's my pleasure again for Michael to be sat with us, sat with and I've no idea where this conversation may or may not go, but I'm looking forward to it. So over to you, brother. Here's Michael.
Hello, thank you. Yes, I'm Michael. um, just picking up there from where Brotherly left off. In terms of the sacral, actually, that's not the issue for me right now. That's working through nicely, if not almost fully resolved. So the question for me now is how do I move forward then from that state with and interacting alongside and with a world that hasn't gone through that yet or is still in the process of going through that in very different degrees. That's the biggest quandary for me right now. Yeah. So today I was thinking, I was like, well, okay, what we'll talk about today, and the notion came to me um, to first speak, well, to speak on the topic of standing in or stepping into one's own mastery. I think it's an important topic to discuss. First of all, I thought it would be best to frame it by, um, first of all, outlining why it is important slash significant to for someone to stand in their own authority uh, on the individual level and on the community level as well.
That's the question. Okay. Well, that leaves it very, very, very open. So basics, let's go back to basics and energetics and look at frequencies and harmonics. And let's just speak to some basic principles of disharmonic and harmonic. You know a lot of this anyway, so we're going to reiterate and go through a little bit of this. And what we've understood in the last 3 years plus is that harmony is more important, regardless as to the perception in the outside world. A harmonic choice, a choice that reveres you, a choice that values yourself, a choice that values your higher divine being, is always preferential to a lesser version. Now, the way we can look at this is by cause and effect. So effectively, we can look, we can look at what actions we've taken previously that we may have thought were benevolent and kind and all of these things that crashed and burned because there were drivers behind them that were emotionally unstable or disharmonic. And therefore the outcome of the event, the cause, whatever you wished to do, may not have followed through the way that you'd have wished for, and ultimately the whole thing collapsed. And the expectation or the anticipation of the outcome is a failure point. So in each life, in everybody's experiences, they would have had many patterns of actions where they've done something and it fell apart. They've done something and it fell apart. They've done something and it fell apart. And the question is why? What was causing it to fall apart? Now, in the old world, negated actions and less than virtuous actions were actually rewarded financially, and let's say through experiences that were seemingly more gracious. But really, that wasn't the case. That was a rewarding one for not carrying their own value. And what we've seen as a twist of this all change in the last certainly 12 years, where the lesser actions are actually culminating in much more implosion of the uh, what would I call it? A falling apart of the premises of what one believes will happen. So this subjective outcome, the subjective nature to which I'm going to do this and it's going to get me that. That's a subjective viewpoint. I'm going to do this to receive that. That's a reward, a sort of doing for reward. The the much more attuned and much more aligned versions of the self knows that there's no reward to be received except that which is received in the moment. There is no reason to want something else. If I do this, then I expect that in return. Those expectations are faulty, and that's where a lot of this fails. And when we put too many of them upon everything outside of ourselves, and not enough of them upon ourselves intrinsically. So to come back to what you were just saying about why is it important that we make better decisions? Because it creates harmony, and harmony is the basis of energetic flow.
What stepping, why is it important, significant that we step into our authority, our own authority
Yeah, well, you
fully?
can't without stepping into it, without acting upon it, without those actions, then you can't embody. So the point and principle about this is embodiment. What we would talk to as embodiment, or wearing of that. One's actions follow their words. So words and actions follow. It's not a case of I say this and then do that. You can't do that when it's embodied. It becomes so simple. So in the embodiment process is the process of action or inaction, empowerment. Most will be in experienced times when they were saying things that were difficult for them to say, or stood in areas and carrying a principle that was difficult with others around them, because they would get mocked or scorned for saying certain things or acting certain ways that were more divine. And they may not be getting you money, they may not be getting you financial reward, they may not be sorting out your life, but what they were doing was honoring the truth of which you are, much more than the outside world would
So
respect.
there's a distinguishment starting to emerge from what you're saying to me in terms of the expression of standing in one's own authority. It seems to me that there's two versions of it. There is standing in one's own authority when you're not sure
Yeah.
that you have the authority, or that this is, the right thing to do, or whatever thing to do. And then there is the standing in one's own authority with the absolute assuredness, the absolute knowing that this is right. I'm going to say, because you've gone through the experience, that has solidified it into me.
So the first one is when you're not sure. Yes, faith and trust are the keys to these. So when you're not sure, how do you become sure? By doing it. And one of the bigger things is everybody,
You're naughty, try.
you know, it's the negotiation. So many people wish to negotiate a truth down, or lessen a truth, or compromise something. And compromise, in the end of a compromise, both parties lose. All of these ideas are based on why. Why would you compromise your own truth? Why would you feel insecure to speak your own truth? What is it about you that others can't accept? Why are you unacceptable to others? And if you are, do you accept yourself? And if you do, then go on that intrinsic value, and that will always be correct. The problem with a lot of this is ones get a little bit sideways with mixing up their own righteous or self-righteous actions as opposed to divinely righteous actions. And this comes back to what you were saying about those two things. The key, as we've discussed many times, is the first choice, the first gate, I call it, the first action, the first binary on off switch, the first black and white. Are you or are you not? Are you more than you think or are you less than you think? Are you God? Are you not? And all of these things work the same way. So when you're stood in that truth, is it coming from a place of divine righteousness or subjective righteousness? Now, ones may perceive that they are divinely righteous and then carry out a set of actions. But what they'll find is if they're not, those actions fail all the way along.
They didn't have the authority they thought they had.
No, but they backed it up with a self authority, which is based in a manipulation via pride of the external situation.
The everything that's been said so far, in my head, it's like ringing out the line, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too.
Yeah, well, we know that Kipling, there's a lot in there that is very real. But again, this is metaphysics levels and they rise.
It
So
fits. It's like
it does fit.
it's like, well, if you when you stand in your authority, first time is heavy levels of trust in terms of faith. You are have you it's like it's the trusting that you know you will get through the experience regardless of how it goes out. And then once you do it, and let's just say it all turns out for the good, then the trust is absolute.
The turning out for the good is another one that can be missed because turning out for the good is subjective. It doesn't matter what it turns out like. It doesn't matter what happens outside of you. It matters what happens within you. So the good is for the good of you, not what happens externally. This is another one of those things at the moment when ones are stepping into these places, you can't do them from a place of arrogance, pride, or sense of anything other than absolute humility, humbleness, effectively. And no, this is what I am. This is just no, just that's it. It's all you're doing it for is yourself in these situations. And this doesn't come with anger. This doesn't come with stress. It just comes with a authority which is within. And it may start off like a squeak. It may just be a little bit of a weak one. It may whatever. But ultimately, each has a choice, the ultimate choice of whatever action they take in any situation. There is nothing outside of you that can force you into making any choice or any action. Everything each does is via their own free will. Woomph. Nobody can force you. Nobody can make you. Nobody can push you into any of these things are false. So every single action and every single thought is yours, and therefore can you be justified divinely with them. So each and every action that you take is an intrinsic one, is an internal one, and each and every single one of them is transient.
So to what degree, if any, do we actually make allowance for others, not just their doubting, but for anything?
We love
Or
them. Is
do we,
there
or do we not? Do we not make any allowance? It's full focus for on.
Depends where you are in your journey with this one, because ones as they're walking their path, they're going to make less allowance for others until they realize, or through what I would call an empathy, higher empathy, that they can make allowance for others. So yes, this is this thing where we sort of stream a little bit, meander a little bit, where I don't know what to say, I'm not sure what I should do. All right. Brilliant. What a great place to start. At least you're not sure. Most people say, oh, I do know. And the other way around is absolutism, and that doesn't work. Being unsure and reflecting upon your actions honestly and openly allows you to see the others through a much broader viewpoint of empathy. And therefore, you make the allowances as well. But this is all practice. You must garner your intrinsic authority first, your divine authority first. And as I've said, this doesn't come with anger. It doesn't come with blame. It doesn't come with a sense of superiority. It's much the opposite of that.
What is backing authority?
What is backing it? Your own truth, your own strength, your own authority, your own divinity, the
Yeah,
higher
what I remember.
energetics, the
So let me
universe, actually.
allow universe backing me, mate. Don't know you on your corner. I know the universe. What I meant by that question was, so there are like old world, plenty of old world examples of authority, people standing in their authority, but it's mostly recognized through a position of office, either office or experience. So the office is a dubious one, but the one through experience is usually worth listening to. Like, i.e., they've lived it, they've done it, they've done it so much that whenever you talk to them about that particular thing, they absolutely stand in their authority in it because
There's,
they
there's
know it inside out, whatever it is.
there's a difference between the two as well with being an expert in something so-called or being an authority in something because you have the knowledge, the information doesn't necessarily correlate to the same thing. But you could say that having an authority on something is
But
understanding it.
yeah, well, that's what I mean is that when that person stands in that authority, he knows he has X amount of years of experience, and he might have like other things he can chuck in there, qualifications, courses, whatever, but mostly experience.
Yeah,
He has that backing him when he
yeah,
stands in there. There's no doubt in his.
yeah.
What we're talking to here, though, in this instance, divine authority, and metaphysical authority and mastery. These are things which um, mesh strangely and awkwardly with what we call the physical reality. And yet they are the most important things moving forward in these times. So um, what's the word I'm looking for? Not reconcile, to reconcile that is a thing I'm playing with at the moment.
It takes. It's like everything else with a lot of this. It's baby steps and honesty, or at least it is at the moment. We know that things are changing. We know that in a few weeks or five-ish weeks, we know we've been given that the sacral is released. So whatever happens up to that point is going to be relative, and after that point is relative too. I don't know exactly, but where we are and where we were, at least where we were, is one must take the first steps, be that whatever that first step is, into a place where ones know that they are acting upon and respecting and having total faith, i.e., love, if you will, in themselves. And when you understand that everything is one, everything is an energy, everything is energetic, everything is energy, then you can realize that your actions affect everything. And therefore, where are you acting from? Acting is not a great, way of looking at it. Acting as opposed
Where
to
are you
being.
thinking?
Well, yeah, but acting as opposed to being. Where are you acting from as opposed to being from? So in this sort of dynamic, what we're looking at is the harmonic of the energetics inside the frequencies of the molecular. It starts to get quite deep because we're going into a sort of dynamic of the creation itself. But creation itself wants harmony. Creation itself is a symphony. So if we're acting disharmonically, then we're directly against that. So the more harmonic we can be, in as much as harmonic is a difficult word for ones to understand because it could mean anything, but trusting you are infinite, trusting you are eternal, trusting yourself, trusting the individual allows you to trust everything because everything is you. Right. Again, this goes into that philosophical, but it doesn't matter because it's actually the truth. In separation, in acting in a way where you need something from something else, means that you are saying you are separate to the one, you are individual. And that means that you are not part of the one energy anymore. You are thinking that you are something else. And this is where actions come from that aren't being. They don't represent the divine unity. They don't represent harmonics. They represent a singular individual need, a want, a desire, a fear, a lack, a scarcity, whatever it may be, a pleasure, a seeking of something, or whatever it is. But it's forgotten that you are everything. So, in that moment of these actions and these subjective thought processes and these narratives that come up from within, the choice of do I or don't I it's very, very powerful. And one of the things I've said, brother, is it's one of the hardest things and one of the strongest things to do is not to do. When the mind and all the energetics in the body and everything in you is sacral and all of these things and all the energies around you is saying, do this, do this, do this, do this, fear, fear, fear. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is sit there and not act because everything is forcing you to act. And a lot of the times, where the mind is trying to get you to go is the complete opposite of where you should be going. Now, the mind splits into two, as we know. We've got the higher consciousness and the lower consciousness, the more feral and the more primal reptilian brain, whatever they wish to call it, and then the higher consciousness mind. So when the mind is working off the lower aspects, then it's very much in primal fear. Whereas working off the higher, it's very much considerate of itself and the all. It doesn't, it's just being, it's being versus doing. So what we've done, and brother, with regards to how we've worked through this all, is we've looked at actions, we've looked at what ones have done, and we've looked at causes and effects, right? And we've seen how, as we strip them down, as we look at each action, even each word, each thought process, we've seen where it's come from. We've seen whether it's got a benevolent drive, emotional, whether it's a higher one from the heart, or whether it's a lower drive with reasons and justifications and all sorts of other things. And we've seen that on acting upon those lesser things, things fall apart. But acting on the higher things, you garner more energy, you garner more assurity, you garner more release. And this is the steps currently for one's certainly at different levels of consciousness to step into their own authority. This isn't about power. This isn't about this isn't about force. This isn't about attempting to show authority on the outside world. This isn't about control of anything outside of you. It's all about control of everything within. Control is a hard word. Some people don't like to use that one, but nevertheless, discipline, disciplined consciousness, which keeps the boundaries of virtue in place for the actions, for the beings. Otherwise, the lesser consciousness comes in, and all sorts of reasons come in as to why I did things which are less than virtuous, which is choices. So all of these right now are hugely, hugely important for many that are able to understand this or to see this, to walk through and to work through knowing that they are completely and utterly backed by the universe, by divine creator, by everything in creation, is wishing everything here to be and blossom and bloom. It's only the people themselves, the individuals, that fear they haven't got enough, or they're not enough, or I'm not doing enough, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And all of these things come in, which forgets that you are everything. And going back to that point is that these are where your actions and your choices can be investigated, let's say. And again, for you, brother, I know I appreciate for what you're saying. This is my, we've been doing this for a couple of years, so I appreciate Michael is asking some questions here, but he is in the position right now where decisions and choices have to be made as well for Michael himself, which have got a sway upon things.
Mm, they do indeed. I don't know what level or detail to go into them right now. I'll, it's an issue with some of it being made public. I don't know, but in essence, yeah, it's. I mean, to give a bit of a brief background, my life has been pretty much that of a seeker. I've been a seeker all my life, most of my life. So, and now I find myself in a position where I'm not really seeking anymore. I see the folly of what seeking is. Um, and now and through various processes, through experiences, I've finally arrived at a moment where everything has kind of, all of that drive, all of that momentum, all of that energy, all of that, everything that went into all of that going through the years is now wound itself down to inertial standstill, homeostasis, I suppose. And now, faced with having reached that point, which way to now move or allow myself to go from there. um, with no driving force within me.
One of the key things with what we've done and what we've looked at
I've
is
never not had a driving force.
no, but that force that was driving you before wasn't necessarily driving you it was driving you forward, but not necessarily in a straight direction.
Drove me all over the place.
Yeah.
Drove me around the bend, up the wall.
But
But it drove me.
what we've done though is we've discovered valueless. We've discovered the lack of value in a lot of different stuff that we thought was valuable, and we stripped that value, right? We stripped that which is valueless, and we found it. We've looked for it. We've looked for the stuff which makes itself seem to be valuable, and said, no, it's not, is it? When we look at it in the eyes, so we faced that demon, that dark, that. I need to do this because it's valuable. Is it truly? Well, no, not really. Okay, good. Let's get rid of it. So what we've done is stripped through all of this. We've gone through this with a micro comb and left at a point where there's nothing left of value.
A barren desert.
Right. Now, that's because all of the value in the old world was valueless. Now we have to add value back. And that's the kicker with a lot of this is where do you add the value back and what do you see as valuable? And reasonably, the only thing that is you and your energy. That's it. So what you're saying about seeking, looking for information, this is the basis of philosophia, philosophia or philosophy is the desire for wisdom or the seeking of wisdom, the learning of wisdom, the love of wisdom. And the only way you really get wise for this is action. Information doesn't give you wisdom. Information is purely information. That's all it is. Action does. So how's that information actionable? And that's where you find the value back. But this is about walking that walk, the steps, walking the path, right? You already have been, but now you've got to do it on a different level.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's everything you just said is like pretty. I mean, that is what for the last several months, few months, working on the infamous human circus that is Pub Street in Siem Reap. Um, it has been a I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I could write probably a novel about the things I forgot happened. So much happened in every 24 hours. Bam, bam, bam. It was full of things, like things happening, meeting new people, having very like fucking deep conversations, and then and it was just non-stop, non-stop. Sleep, wake up, rinse, repeat, bang, 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 and yeah, and there were so many times throughout that I saw, especially through an old world lens, like infinite potential, possibility, and fertile ground, left, right, and centre everywhere I looked. But it was off slightly, although as I said, there was always something slightly off, and so the synergies were never able to fully complete, and and the because the harmony is off. I mean, synergy is just another version of harmonies, like the synchronicities as well. I mean, the synchronicities were happening all the time anyway, but it it would just skew off slightly in some way, but that would be okay because there was another two or three things that you could find. It's just bang, 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 one thing after another. But because it was disharmonic, nothing ever sustained, nothing ever maintained. It just sort of grew very fast, very quick, and would then fizzle out. And
One of the ways that the dark mind, the lower mind, offers reward is short-term gratification. So what you just said there, it will start off and really get and then fizzle out. That's the kicker with this. So what the lower world rewarded you with was short-term gratification, long-term disappointment. So exactly what you're saying, you get that reward, that feeling of this is the right thing to do, yes, and then rinse and repeat every day in a different type, but the same function. Yes, 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 there's something to this, but 23 and a half hours of that day there wouldn't be. Just that half an hour would keep you going like a drug. And that
Oh,
would
far
be
more than half and half.
possibly,
But,
that would be what the drive was. But you look at the end of it, the whole thing collapsed and everything fell apart.
but you know the thing is the thing that like is the most tragic about it all is the fact that the when it fell apart, I would say 9 times out of 10, it fell apart because somebody broke their integrity in some way. Like, and usually it was like a lot of times it was a small way, but a lot of times it was in like quite a significant way. And then it was like, and so it's like, especially if it's say if it's an idea that has got all the nuts and bolts in the right way, and it's got complete legs, and logically, there's absolutely no way you could see it going wrong, especially if all the players who have conceptualized this fulfill on everything that was said. And then when the fulfillment doesn't come, the integrity gets broken. It's not just they've broken their integrity with me, which that and they didn't do what they said they would, but that comes with its own like. But at the same time, it's seeing this thing that could have been brilliant and beautiful die as well. And it's like it's a double whammy. You know what I mean? It's like you didn't just slap me; you slapped something that could have been a great creation because of whatever reasons you have. And that really wound me down and ground me down the most over as time went by. It really did.
The thing about that is lack of trust, and this is one of the ones that's very very key and really really evident is, and most people will understand this too. Trust. How can you trust somebody who's not trustworthy? And define trustworthy. So if you say you're going to do something and then you don't do it, are you trustworthy? Um, you can say, "Oh, there's reasons. There's this. There's that." Oh, no, 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 no. So giving your word is very important, and sticking by your word is very important, regardless as to whether it costs you, whether it puts you out. If you've said that you'll do something, unless you can renegotiate that, which you should be able to do, but if you just fob it off, then you are not trustworthy. You are not good to your word. And one of the things that you do learn very, very quickly and is to trust everybody. I trust everybody. I trust everybody intrinsically. Um, when I first meet them, I trust that they will show me what they can be trusted with. And so therefore I can't trust everybody fully, but I do. And they can earn that trust. Trust should not be given. Trust should be earned. Obviously, I reach out to everybody with absolute trust,
But
but
all
let them
things
show
being
me.
equal, without prior information, i.e., experience of interacting with that person, and you see you've got no information to base any decision on, the benefit of the doubt will always fall in you will always fall into trust.
That's where you've got to be a little bit careful about whether you're subjective or objectively giving that trust. Benefit of the doubt, if there's a subjective outcome, means that you'll trust ones regardless, and you'll turn a blind eye because the outcome is what you're after. Objective trust is they get one chance, and if they turn into a subjective, if we're talking about something, let's say we're going to do something, we're going to go somewhere, we're going to do something now. If in this idea, there's a good, it's a great idea, it could work really well, but one or two of the people involved want something else out of it. They have an agenda, they have a plan, they have a subjective outcome. They want this, or they want to be that, or we need to do this. When that outcome isn't reached, or when they're not getting what they want, then things fall apart. So this subjective nature, which is impacting it, is where the trust falls apart. Because as soon as one is using that place of, I want this, I'm going to do this, I need that out of it, I want this reward, or that's the outcome that we're looking for, and it's not agreed upon. This is something that is from the individual nature, and most people are very coy about telling their actual truth of what they're doing. Then that's where that comes out eventually. So whether or not it's hidden at the beginning and it comes out a little bit later on or not, are the people objectively trustworthy? Are the ones you're working with objectively trustworthy? Do they regard themselves? Do they hold themselves to an authority that is in line with your own boundaries? If you're going to formulate, if you're going to walk, if you're going to act or be from a place of absolute transparency and truth and honesty, and that's your boundary that you hold within you. You would never tell a lie. You would never con. All of these things. You've got no subjective outcome at all. You are at that place of neutrality. then when you're dealing with others that maybe aren't, you know what they're going to do. You know that and all you can do then is guide and help them and assist them. But you certainly wouldn't let them look after you because you couldn't trust them. They'll throw you under a bus or they'll throw this. It depends on what happens in their environment as to how they react because they're still reactors. But if you get to a place where you're not a reactor, then trusting reactors not to react is a little bit silly. But this is just where that experience comes in. So, in this respect, we are moving to a place where this stops because integrity is the basis of the new world. Integrity means that you can be trusted with your word because you will be true to it, right? Now, to whatever degree that looks like, because it's going to be a very different place, but reasonably, that's what we're looking at, and that could be very shortly. So, from a place of trust, we can rebuild everything. But from a place of pseudo trust, everything falls apart. Welcome to the old world. Misplaced trust, displaced trust, misrespect, all of these things demanded. People that want things and can try to manipulate and control the outside world, people that tell the outside world what it must do, people that tell the outside world how it is affecting them. These people haven't quite got there yet. They're still looking to control, to explain, to manipulate, to justify actions, to negotiate with the outside world, a peace deal. They're at war with themselves and they want to negotiate with something outside of them to stop being at war with themselves, which is kind of silly, but nevertheless, what it was. So all of these statements into the outside world of you did this and they did that, and these blame and fingers, insinuations, we've got to move away from it, as you well know, brother.
Selfish, selfish, selfish. Everyone's so selfish. No one's thinking about me.
There's
Yeah.
so in GP, we've been given divinely that we don't even talk to, we don't denounce, we don't speak out against the old world because we know divinely the physics of the universe will give you what you don't want, give you what you need, but not what you want. So the more we denounce the old world, the
Unless
more
what
the
you
old
want
world
is
is
what you
given.
actually need. So
Yeah,
you better get your wants in alignment with your actual needs.
or get rid of them
So
both.
there's quite there. There's a thing. There's a something that someone could ask themselves or consider. How does one best align their wants to their actual needs? How
Well,
do you identify what those actual needs are and then align your wants to it, or realize that they're actually what you want anyway?
the interest is we've played this one for a while. This wants, needs, desires, and ultimately we've got to a point where there is no want that can be justified. Um, unless you could, I want to pick up my cup. That's fine. Michael, can you pick? I want you to pick that up for me. That's not, so these things are very, very different. If you want something for yourself and you can do it for yourself, of course you can use the word want. What do you need? Well, if you understand the universe supplies you everything that you need, what is it you think you need? What is it you haven't got when the universe gives you everything that you need? What is it that you haven't got? And these are subjective wants then and needs. Well, I haven't got this. Well, it's because you don't need it. Well, I haven't got. I want it though. Well, you don't need it. Otherwise, you would have it. That kind of philosophical. If you haven't got it, it's because you don't need it. Yeah, but I want it. Okay.
So there's a static want there's a static want and there's an action want. So or the opposite of static. So static want is coming from the lack perception that I don't have.
Hmm.
And the action want is, as you said, I want to take a sip of my cup of tea.
Yeah. So we can utilize the
There's no
word
sense of
want.
lack in it. It's just, no, it is, in this moment, I now want to engage in this action.
Like most other words that we can demonize the words because they've got basic or based meaning perspectives in the old world. We can utilize the word want perfectly normally. We just redefine the word want. If I can do it, then I want to do it. No problem. Look, I want to show you anybody watching this, my crystal. Happy days. All of those are great. There's nothing in that. But if the want requires something from somebody else, and certainly then if it's emotionally manipulated afterwards, if they say no, for instance, I would like to do this. No, as soon as you come back and ask why not or what for, what anything like that, you're not respecting the other guy's no. So if there's a subjective want and you ask somebody else to help you out with it and they say no, and then you continue, it's because you want them to do something, but they haven't agreed to it. And so therefore you've taken away their authority and their free will by telling them or emotionally trying to, well, you should because I did this or all of these old world things. They've said no, respect their opinion, respect their choice, right? If you want something from somebody, if you feel that somebody can help you with something, then you ask for it humbly. And if they say no, you respect their decision. This is should be simple.
Yeah,
It should be
should
simple,
be elementary.
but
I
it's
think the word
not.
is elementary.
Yes, and it hasn't been.
Well, it
Um,
hasn't. No. Well, that's been one of the biggest tricks of social programming of social conditioning.
One of the ways of stepping in your own authority is utilizing the authority of the word no. So in your respect, it's been you've done that. So I wouldn't suggest you keep doing the no things. I'd suggest you start saying yes to a little bit more. But reasonably for others, when they are being asked to do things, it's the standing in your authority and saying no, 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 not today, or no, no, no more. Those times can be quite hard for ones to step up to the ability to say no, especially if they're used to saying yes. But what are they saying yes to? They're saying no to themselves when they're saying yes to something outside of them that's making them upset. So all of these things need to be re-envisioned and looked at intrinsically, carrying that intrinsic value is what we're talking about. And then that carries that authority. So start saying no to things that you don't want to do. You don't want to do it. Somebody else wants it from you. Wants and needs are of no good. They are of no good to anybody. Desire is the only one that is of benefit is philosophy, the desire for wisdom. That's the only one. And that can only be guided through information, which sometimes you need to seek. Nothing wrong with asking for something, right? And then working with. So it's not what you get, it's what you do with it. So it's not the information that's important, it's what you do with it that's important, right? And that means you've got to walk the walk of it. If you get the information that says you shouldn't be doing that, or that maybe you want to think about doing that, and you keep doing that, well, you haven't done anything with the information then. You haven't valued it. So a lot of this is about reevaluation and then setting that ball rolling, going and doing things from a place of being, from a place of no expectation, from a place of I can, so why not? And wanting nothing back from it except the experience. And taking that experience and using it then in reflection and saying, what came out of this? What happened? I was the cause because I did it. What did I receive? What can I learn? What happened? And looking at these things and breaking them down and saying, okay, this. So what good, what benevolence can I take out of it? Not what negative, but what good? How do I refine that action next time? And next time, and next time, and next time. So what we're doing is then we're upping it. Each time we're upscaling the action through honest reflection, truthful, transparent, intrinsic reflection. I did it. It was all me. What happened? How can I improve that next time? These things are very, very socially upside down in the old psyop, but we're not in that anymore. We're moving into the next place. And these things are disciplines. These things are disciplines. It's very difficult because these words are so heavy. But without you taking the time to discipline yourself to those actions, then all of these distractions happen. As you were talking about on Pub Street, 100 mile an hour, 24 hours a day, no
Non-stop.
time, no time
No, not
to sit back and relax and reflect
flu.
and then bang, 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 bang. And all of this leading you to a path of what
It's
comes.
exciting. Yeah, you know, what I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You know, what I mean, there is a crude, crude, barbarous, whatever you want to call it, savage thrill to it, akin to sitting in a cart on a set of rails that's going to flip you upside down on a roller. In a theme park, it's that to it. You know, what I mean, it's that carnival-esque.
It's almost like watching two trains approaching each other at 100 mile an hour
Yeah,
and not being able to
it's
take your eyes off them.
it's
Car
one of
crash
those kinds of
television.
like fascinations.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. It's a carnival-esque, I like to call it.
One eternity later.
Yep.
Hello and welcome back. Just had a quick break. Should I take it back again? Where we left off.
few minutes later.
Oh yes. So I was extolling the gritty and filthy pleasures of bouncing around the human circus of life that is the old world. But ultimately, it's as great as that roller coaster is. You don't want to be living on it. Uh, it grinds you down very quickly.
You learn from it though.
You learn from it.
If you're able to learn, otherwise you rinse and repeat. Um, so all of these experiences have all got function. The kicker is what's the function, and the driver therefore can be seen by the function. So why did you do it? We can you know with Pub Street and with a few of the choices that were made down that path, um, that there was, let's say, a selfish lack nature that was driving underneath. Doesn't mean to say that that was the predominant driver and that you were going into it from that position, but nevertheless, there was that garnet there. And on that journey, there were subjective outcomes that were desired. Um, Again, these aren't something that you're going to penalize one for. These aren't things you're going to say, well, that's terrible, that's disgusting, that's no, no, it's just what it was. And the nature to that was the human experience, the lower psyop, the lower, let's leave it as it is, the lower sacral experiences was very much along those lines. Nobody knew any better,
No, I
really.
can testify there was a lot of very low sacral experiences.
But
Yeah.
these were relative because they are to be released and relative for in fact everybody they're in controlled environments, even if you can't see that in the mode. But in the exploration of that, when Michael came over to Siem Reap, when was it, bro? About October, November, November. I think it was mid-January that we had to, you came over in November, was it? You said,
November 2nd.
and come. I think it was the beginning of December or the end of December. You were looking towards this pub street thing.
Literally, I started working at the club I was working at on New Year's Eve.
So these choices were not, let's say, agreed upon. These were Michael wishing to go and prove something, and he'll openly state this. Um, Prove something, stand alone. I can do things this way, that way. All of these concepts were there, but they had to be experienced to be released.
Well, the working theory was that um, um, there was. I had an intuition. I felt I had an intuition that there was a path that fit who I was and how I like to surf the wave, so to speak. And what was presented all of a sudden here in Siem Reap was a very, I mean, to put this into context, when you come from a place like European country and then you arrive here and then you see exactly, the nature of the culture here, the way things go here, and the potential is staggering. And all of a sudden, actions you would have never even thought of, let alone taken back in Europe, now suddenly are on the table simply by virtue of the place of where you are and how it is here culturally. And so what I was ultimately proving or attempting to prove was that all of the things I had been excusing or using as excuses as to what my failures were in the past. Well, it wasn't me, it was because of this, there's regulation of that, and this. All of those weren't here. So I thought, true to my own excuses, or past excuses, that I was now in a fertile environment. I was now in a playground where all those things which I had pinned as the causes of my failures in the past were no longer there. So I plunged head first, trying to see, well, and ultimately what I proved was that it didn't matter. It ultimately didn't matter because the thing that was causing the failures had nothing to do with the environment, the restrictions, the regulations, etc., etc., etc. It's what's going on inside.
Yeah, I'll openly say this, and I use the word we couldn't
Different
learn.
form, same function.
We couldn't learn without the experience of failure again in the old world of that. There was many opportunities not to take that path. There was many opportunities to choose a different path that were ah, it's not fair to say less than valued, but they were negated because there was other things that were predominant, which were subjective drivers. There were old emotional drivers. There were old lacks, but they were nevertheless they overpowered the higher choices for a part of it. And again, this is something we can talk about objectively and openly because it's factual. It happened. This isn't something that's being created. It's not made up. This has been agreed. This is what happened. So we can talk about these things very objectively and very functionally, without fear of stepping on people's emotions or upsetting people in any way. No, this came from a place of emotional drivers which were unstable. In the process of harmonizing them, in the process of seeing them, was a series of collapses. Um, what is it? We call them a
Cascade of consequences.
cascade of consequences. Perfect. So a cascade of consequences followed the initial action, especially after the reward has been garnered. So the initial action gives that reward, which gives more drive. The cascade of
Oh, it was
consequences
like
gets
kid in a sweet
harder,
shop.
harder,
Kid in a sweet shop.
harder.
Kid in a sweet shop.
And any objective truth would have been negated by the subjective self-righteous belief, which kept you in that path for a bit, which is cool because the longer you were in that path, the more things came in that distracted you into more internal suffering,
Well, it just increased
despair.
density, weighed me down. Well, it started to weigh me down more
Yes,
and more and more
the
and more.
disharmonics. You can't keep going against that which you are, even if you think you can. All of the excuses don't work, and a lower mind can't. The center doesn't hold in the reasons. Well, the center doesn't hold in the reasoning. So when we discuss it afterwards with a clear view, with an open view on it, we can see that it wasn't what we thought it was. It wasn't these things. Yeah, some technical problems going on. The battery's not plugged in and bits and pieces. We'll get through it. No, so we can see through reflection and honest reflection that the failures weren't failures. They weren't mistakes. What they were was opportunities to experience and learn from, but without repetition. So subsequently, Michael's been to the pub street, seeing stuff, and then came, and now we've been sat for how long? A couple of months in reflection, relatively, and in contemplation, reconciliation, whatever you wish to call it, and we're getting closer to this next phase, this next step, this next period of divine timing along this ascension path, where the sacral is being released. So these pressures are being experienced, these lesser than optimal choices being made from places of lack and scarcity and other subjective lesser places that are causing ones to remain distracted, separated, and divided. Feeling of individuality above the whole and these sort of things. And it's not a place of authority. This is a place of completely opposite of authority, where ones are in command and control of the outside world is not a place of authority. That's in a place of dictatorship. The authority is where you don't need to do that at all because it's got nothing to do with you. There's the inner authority. And of course, this is not what we were used to experiencing. So in this lead up to this place now where we're at, many around the planet or this plane, this realm will be experiencing this release of that individual and it will feel like death. It will feel like a death. It will be a death and a rebirth in one fell swoop. It will feel like a loss of the self. It will feel like it can feel, not will, it can feel like a despair. It can feel like, oh, there's nothing left. It can feel hopelessness and value. Worthlessness is what you can actually garner from this. Those feelings become very real. But those feelings have always been there. This is the kicker with a lot of this. Ones don't realize that those valueless, worthless despair are the emotional drivers driving you to seek reward, driving you to seek return, driving you to seek compensation. They are the driver they're chauffeuring your life from those places. And when we get back to that place where we've removed all that which is valueless, that's what we're left with. That hopelessness, worthlessness, and but we know that's of no value to us either because it's not real. So all of this disintegrates into nothing, and there's nothing left. Welcome to you. And because everything now can be added. And this is the beauty of this. It can be very daunting. It can be very um, I'm not going to use the word fearsome because it's not, but it can be daunting, overwhelming, confusing, bewildering, going against social and structural norms, cultural norms, going against teachings, going against everything that it was known. Can be daunting. All of these things, but they are necessary. Otherwise, how are you you? Unless you actually take authority of what it is that you actually are, what it is that you represent, what it is that you know, how it is that you walk, and what it is that you do. Without that authority, how are you you? So if you're not you, what are you? These sort of things. And very difficult for ones who are distracted, spending all their time in this circus, to spend that time in that contemplation. But blessed to say that we have been able to. We chose that option, let's say, and where that path was opened up divinely, so that we could sit down and delve into these depths of energetics in action, depths of cause and effect, depths of truth, honesty, respect, wisdom, integrity, virtue, honor, depths of honor. And when we actually start doing that, you know, brother, when we've looked at the teachings, are you worthy? You know, am I due? All of these things, I will honor it. When we look at what does that mean, what does honoring it mean? It's not what people think in general. It means that you honor things which you don't necessarily honor in this circus, but you honor things like your truth. You honor things like your morality. You honor things like your objectivity. You honor things like your inner authority, which you know is divine, and therefore you honor the other's divine authority too. You honor them like you honor yourself. And that's a different type of honor. That means whatever comes out of your mouth will be your truth. And it's not just what comes out of your mouth, it's what thought created it. So you honor your thoughts, you honor your being because you are, these sort of things. This becomes very deep, but it's undeniable.
Yeah, deep. But I mean, I suppose I should say it's once you've reduced everything in your life down to its absolute bare minimum. In theory, it should be simple then after that, because each step you take towards greater levels of complexification is essentially what, the re-addition of value, the re-adding of something worth engaging with, taking action towards, or moving in a direction with, is going to be very minimal. It's going to be one thing at a time. It's going to be, it's not going to be having to, all the hard work's already been done. Basically, all that thing which was creating clouds of distraction and noise.
Once you've got to that place, yes, and that for I was self-acceptance. So
It's the beginning of a new level of struggle.
no,
It's the beginning of a not struggle, but it's the beginning of a new level of
new level, yes.
yeah.
Less struggle, more. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's what now what, and then a whole
Game
lot more opens
changes,
up.
but
Yeah,
it doesn't at the same time.
the self-acceptance led to a quietening of the mind, an opening of the lower heart, or an opening of the heart. The sacral release into there came from a place of self-acceptance, I call it, into personal judgment. I judged myself for my own actions, and I found myself not guilty. I forgave it all and became grateful for everything that other versions of Lee have done. I love all those other versions of Lee for what other versions of Lee did, without knowing. All of those things became one. And that meant that there's a quieting, because I'm not looking for blame. Then I'm not looking for consolidation. I'm not looking for reconciliation from other versions, because they're all forgiven. So now there's only now. What do I need? Nothing. Great, let's move forward then. And it becomes very much simpler. Complexification, I like that word. That's coming from the lesser mind, where there's thoughts that come in that are less than desirable. Why are they acted upon? Why are they considered? Why aren't they just toyed with? Or why aren't they just shown love and said, okay,
Classification, I would
don't need it?
point to add at the moment, is not necessarily a bad thing if it's done with meticulousness, grace, with care, with artistry, etc., etc. It's when it's unbidden or unnecessary.
Yeah, unnecessary complexity. Whereas isn't that fun? The complexity is necessary for those that are able to go through the complexity. The other side of the complexity is the simple. So we start with simple and it gets complex, and then we go to the other side of that, it becomes simple again, and then the next layer of complexity as we meander that old route. Um, the complexity, the truth about complexity is complexity comes from doubt. Relatively, it's questions that haven't been answered. Complexity. Well, I don't know. I don't know what's going to. I don't know this, and I don't know that. There's complexity. Do you need to know? Well, not really. Well, then it doesn't matter. That's the simple. But to get to become comfortable in an environment, you have to be comfortable in your own self, right? And this is that part of that authority. So it doesn't matter what environment you're in, if you are comfortable with your own authority in your own self, if you are solid, if you have a foundation, core, then nothing can touch you, right? And therefore, there's nothing that can become complex. It can only be delivered to you in a complex fashion. But you don't have to accept it because you have the simplicity. So you can always deliver the simplicity back, you know, and this interaction can happen, but it's all outside of you. So when one's received this complexity or one's create the complexity, remember the simple. You don't need complexity. In one of the ways that I can explain it is looking at metaphysics and looking at the interaction of toroidal fields, um, electric and magnetic field shapes and types in a toroidal arrangement, creating an atom. So a single molecule would be a toroidal field, and obviously there's quite a few of them. And each of those fields interact with each other, creating via different geometries at different frequencies to give different molecular proportion, mass and magnitude in this temporal space, right? So all of that is energy spinning and going back to a substrate, ether, source, God, and returning in a constant flow. Everything is connected to everything, and it's all interacting together in this temporal game. To try to understand the complexity of that, when you look at the interaction of those spinning energies, the toroidal energies, the magnetic electric effects, and these ideas, on a level that is this grand, you would get lost very, 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 and I did. So you have to go past complexity and have faith that enough is enough. I know enough of that to be able to stand above it. I don't need to know everything it does. There's others that may do. But if I can stand above that complexity, if I can trust, then I can build on that trust. And I know that then the complexity will always come into focus.
It will reveal itself.
Yes. And also the lack of truth one's maybe putting into the complexity will reveal itself because it's not functional. It doesn't carry the divine functions.
It doesn't hold water.
It doesn't, the center doesn't hold. It doesn't, when questioned, it falls apart. It can't just stand in its own truth. So all of these things are very, very, how would I call it? A juggle, but in, not for everybody, I don't think. This isn't something that everybody must understand or do. It's just that we had to go through it. Maybe many will. I don't know. But the idea and the complication that I'm speaking to now in what I'm giving, it sounds complicated. It's not. It's complicated to try to describe it, but in here it's not. It's very, very simple. But to try to give it a place, yeah, verbally becomes complicated because we haven't got that simple to the level of consciousness we've got in this game.
Well, enough people haven't, to the best of my knowledge, got to the level where discussion has evolved new vocabulary.
Not yet redefined as well. Yeah, evolved and redefined it. So no, we're getting there. We're taking other words out. We're taking things out. We're utilizing different words in different ways. We can define anything. We can redefine anything. We can agree on a meaning, and that's our agreement. It doesn't matter what others think. That's subjective. This is about context. And another thing that people are unaware of is context. So when they're looking at situations and environments, they tend to take things out of context and utilize a context which suits their story rather than an objective contextual overview of what actually happened. And that may not be relative to the event. It may be over a longer period the event sits in. So one have to be aware that this is malleable and extends. Context can be over a year for one thing to happen in that year, and contextually it involved a year. So if you just take that one thing or take a couple of evidence things, it
Well,
doesn't work
most people are in their own bubble. The context never extends beyond that bubble
yet.
yet.
Yes, but this is the way the old world worked, and in orating a lot of this and speaking it out, anybody that may watch this can. There's no real answer to a lot of this. There is the pure truth and there is the pure faith, but there's no answer for each. What there is an exploration of questions and answers, an exploration of that, which is philosophia. It's a wonderful tool for experiencing that exploration of what can we agree on, and then what can we build on. How do we define wisdom? So in this exploration of these things, then we can take that which was known and we can redefine it into that which we know now. We don't need to bring any of it with us. We just start it afresh. So all of this can be started afresh every day, every minute. Start it afresh, right? Wipe the slate, start again. Now is a new now, right? All of this, but people in general, we didn't know in the old world that that could be done. Everything seemed to follow itself linearly, and the old followed you into the now, which followed you to the future. The old and the future are not necessary. There's only the now, and that changes each time we choose to change it. And that can be at the drop of a hat, he says. So all of this can be done very, very quickly, and everybody has the choice to be able to do this. They have the choice. They have the authority to make the choices for themselves. Everybody on the planet. This is another thing about this. To make the choice for yourself. Taking that choice and enacting it from a higher place has been where we find the slippery slope. Found. Let's put it all in the past. That's been where we found the slippery slope.
Also, as well, I mean, the I suppose I could call it a context paralysis, akin to analysis paralysis,
Mm.
where when it's sort of the opposite end of the scale of the issue with the people who are in their own bubble, and therefore because they are in their own bubble, the contexts that they are able to conceive of or to contextualize and conceive and to factor in when considering anything tends to not go beyond that bubble. There is the other end of that scale where people who have such far-reaching bubbles, who are attempting to reach limitless, unlimited bubbles, trying to conceive the inconceivable, trying to conceive of what unlimited and limitless looks like. They see everything that's going on in the world, and it creates, it puts one in this position of, well, just that paralysis, almost. It's because we're at this particular moment in time, especially, we're at the fulcrum point of so many different things on so many different levels, not just the new timeline, old timeline as well. Everything is culminating. It's moving to a head, and to this thing that we're all inevitably moving towards. But we're at this awkward moment, I suppose. This sort of I'm not sure how to frame it. A moment where any direction is as good as another, seemingly. But I know that that is not true because there is only one direction that is genuinely true or good, despite the seemingly um, equality of relevance to everything.
How you hold yourself in that direction is what's important. What you tolerate and what you do in that direction is important. How much you go through and follow on with that direction is what's important. How much you fight against it rather than accept it is what's important. How much you blame it and feel controlled by it as opposed to not is what's important. A lot of the other side to what we were taught to be in the old world is what's important. And so each direction is perfectly valid, yes, dependent on why it's chosen and then why it is done. These things are more valid than the direction. What's it done for? Why is it done, etc., etc. But this is for each to move through. There's no, you know, there's no telling one what they must and mustn't do. This is an individual choice. Each is given that. Yet the guidance that ones do get, the assistance that ones do get, they tend not to take on board because they don't value it as much as possibly other things from the old world that are still there. These aren't problems. These are what they are as culminations, like you just said. We're in a crescendo moment. We're crescendoing. There's something's going to give. It's what it doesn't matter. The trust and the faith is what's needed. When you can see the whole playing field, it doesn't lead to paralysis necessarily, unless you've got a if you look at the planetary playing field, you can go into a galactic and then a universal and then a higher one. So you've got bigger playing fields to look at. So it doesn't necessarily move you, paralyze you here. There's too many variables. Most of the time, there's too many variables to call a an outcome. There's only probabilities and likelihoods. Um, in all of this, the way that the game works, it's probabilities and likelihoods. It's all about belief systems. It's all about interjection of truths here, there, and everywhere to create the outcome that's divinely required, and that's what we're doing. So all of this is divinely perfect. All of this is exactly where it needs to be, and all of this is leading very, very quickly now towards a release and a sea change, a paradigm shift. 20th apparently this month, 24th of this month. Again, we got all of these dates, but the this it's in the inevitability of this. If it doesn't happen in the next 6 weeks, it's going to happen in the next period. If it doesn't, if GPMS doesn't happen this year, it will happen next. If it doesn't happen next, it will happen the year after. These things are not things that are not going to happen. These things are on their way to happening.
But they're inevitable.
Yes. So the inevitability is what you stick your faith on. Now, in the interim is transient. So why do you have faith in transience? It's only for now. It's only a short period of time. What would you invest
Because
into that?
I was thinking about it yesterday in terms of GPMS. When 'cause in the very early days, one of the questions I had about GPMS is well, how can we be so certain? How can you be so certain that the GPMS is going to be the future? That's exactly what's going to happen, and it's all over. And well, fundamentally, the answer to that is well, because all GPMS describes is the inevitable outcome of the process in which humanity is under right now.
We
So all we've done is just given it a name. We've called it GPMS. We could have called it anything. Really, all we're doing is giving it a designated title or name to the inevitable outcome the outcome of an inevitable process in humanity's
since you met,
humanity.
I've never from the first day you met IGPMS, there's never been a doubt because it is inevitable. It's what everybody wishes for, everybody wants. It's the freedom and choice that everybody hasn't got, but would love to have. It's there's nothing, there's nothing in it that is negative. There's only benevolence and there's only a positive outcome and a divine outcome for each. It's beyond inevitable. You can be there. So the actual GPMS itself, again, we can talk about GPMS on another chat for ones that if they wish. But we're what, an hour and a quarter in. I'm going to call this one. I'm going to say at this point, we're going to keep doing these as best as we can. All right, aren't we? You know, we're going to try to at least. And divinely, it's been difficult to get some of these out. There is other things going on, and there are monitoring. There's divine, all sorts of things. GPMS, we have the inaugural presentation of a panel for the world. It is the first one where we actually present GPMS as a solution properly and in unity. And this is this coming weekend. This is on the 20th. This is precursory. We've been given that we need to get this done by the 24th because there's something significant at that point which will align humanity towards freedom and GPMS. So we shall see what that brings. But this is coming out of this weekend, and love to Mike, love to you all, guys. You just keep with it, stick with it, and we've got this onwards and upwards, brothers and sisters. We'll keep bringing these out as we can. We've got a lot. There's a lot more information that we can bring out, but we can't. We need the people to move at the same time with us. So as everything else lifts up, then we can deliver more and more and more. So thank you all. Thank you, Mike. Over to you now, brother.
Thank you very much, everybody. And if you've listened and watched up to this point in time, thank you very much for your time. Love, light, balance, and gratitude. And we shall see you in the near future.